Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are fixing things, namely the centre vents in here. They have stopped lifting and coming up and down as they should. I don't know what time I'm going to get, but I also need to address that. Some absolute melon has knocked that over for me and kindly driven off without leaving any details in a company sign written van. So, you know, Darwin Award there for that person. But let's have a look at these first and foremost. They're getting stuck halfway up. It's a very common problem with the F Type, where on the way up, you watch them go all the way up now. So we should be able to see when the fans go down. Yeah, look, they're getting stuck halfway like that. Yeah, disappointing. That's just needs a little bit of help to get over it. That's really sad. Let me stop that beeping. So there is a fix for this. It's well documented and it's very common on the F Type. So let's dive into getting this unit off and applying the fix to those sticky fans. If it doesn't work, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, we'll have to replace this whole thing, but let's see how we go. But before we get into that, please guys, if you haven't already, press that subscribe button, turn the notifications on, and let's get going. So I've found an incredibly useful guide online by somebody called Alex. Thank you, Alex. This thing is invaluable as to how to get these vents out and how to actually fix the issue. So I'll pop a link for that down in the comments. I need to give kudos to Alex for this. This is not my guide at all. I'm just following it and doing so on video. So Alex, you're the man. Thank you. Let's dive in, follow your guide and see how we go. So firstly, we need to remove this. From Alex's guide, this just pops off. Wow, okay, there we go. That was easy. And we also need to remove this grill back here, which is in a bit better than that fascia plate. So I'll flash up the guide on the screen as I'm going rather than hold this in front of the camera. From looking at Alex's guide here, we need to remove not only the rear hinge cover here, but there's 4 Torx bolts down here which remove the center speaker, which is up there. So let's get those out and let's see how far we've got once they're out. It's really hard to see down here because you've got the windscreen in the way. So I've just been outside to have a quick look and you can see exactly where they're located, which should now allow me to, perfect, get those loose. 2 at the back, and there should be 2, might need an extender for that, 2 down the front here. Just gonna stick my head out the front again and see if I can see what's happening in those frontmost holes. Like I say, it's hard to get up there with the windscreen in the way. So that's all 4 of the speaker bolts out. Now we need to try and get this trim cover off back here from the hinge as per Alex's guide, and then we've got the screws down the front here that need to come out, so let's get that done. I can tell you now that is going to be an absolute pig to get back in, the way that's come out. I can't for the life of me get the plug off of that alarm indicator, and the cables are so small. I've just pushed it up back here out the way. I don't want to risk damaging any of those cables. I can quite easily see that would be a whole dashboard out job to fix, which I am not in the business of. So let's focus back on these bolts down the front here and see if we can't get the vent out. So the centre vents are out. That really did actually come out quite easily. You can see from here perfectly where the 4 screws at the back are that hold this in. A lot easier to see without the windscreen in the way. And then you've got the 2 tabs here for the bolts at the front. So 6 bolts in total, a couple of bits of trim to pop off, and you've got yourself a set of vents out of the car. So what we're going to do now, following Alex's guide, we need to pop out this spindle, having removed the motor that drives this thing, and we will then be able to remove a bit of the friction off of this spindle and re-grease it with some silicone grease. So I'll put that on time lapse and we'll do that now. So what I've done is I've removed the 2 plastic pivot pins from here, which has allowed the whole thing to now spring up with these assistant springs still in place. So what I want to do now is get in here and remove this spindle here by releasing that little spring there and rotating the whole thing around, and then I should hopefully be able to pull out that whole shaft and re-grease that. It's really interesting. So I think I've found my culprit. So this is the spindle shaft out of this side that goes into the keyway in the motor, and then in turn you've got that cam that turns and pushes the motor or pushes the vents up. So that's come out relatively, nice and easy. But this side is in there really tight, which I think is where my resistance is coming from. And even if I can get a focus on that, you can see it looks like this has experienced some friction and rubbing of that plastic, because what you have is in the end of the vent, this sits over the end of it, and that does not turn nicely at all. That is not a smooth surface. So I've kept everything on the correct side that it's come off of. I've got each of those. I've got these 2 here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to ever so slightly sand back those surfaces, and I've got a bit of silicone grease that I'm going to be putting on there. Hopefully that eliminates the problem. If not, we'll put a new one of these in, but at least we've tried to save ourselves a couple of £100, I'm assuming. I don't know, I'll put the price down the bottom, but saved ourselves quite a bit of money in trying to fix this first time round. So let's sand those back, let's grease everything up and put it back together and see how it feels. So it's really clear now that I've sanded those down, these 2 surfaces here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to get a file, and I'm just going to do the mating faces in here as well. That's on Alex's guide to do that. So I'm going to get a file and see if I can just get those, with a bit more play in them. I don't want lots of play because I don't want the whole thing wobbling around, but equally just try and remove a bit of friction off that mating surface. And then the final piece to this side of the jigsaw is the pin that goes through there. I'm just going to give that a little bit of a sand down as well to remove any friction from that part of the pivot assembly there. So the left hand side of the assembly is all sanded back. Let's put some grease on it and see if that makes a noticeable difference when it's all back together in terms of how much friction there is on these surfaces. Right, so the spindle's back in. I now need to put this locking ring back on. Just a bit of grease around the inside of there as well. So that's clicked back into place. You can see the excess grease out the side there. Let's do the other side and then let's see how it is, how it's operating. And then finally, before I reconnect these pivot sway bars, whatever you want to call them, I've greased the pin that keeps them together. They're all moving parts and they're all friction surfaces. It doesn't make sense, but I suppose you'd probably be a bit crazy if you started putting bearings in a piece like this. So I get it, but everything that is a moving part involved in this, with the exception of the hinge down at the back there, I've now greased with silicone grease. So let's pop those back in, and then that's the assembly ready to go back into the car. So quite easy to see now, the grease in all of this, all these moving parts, and also just into, into these bits in here as well. They've been greased. Same for the other side. So let's get that back in the car. So before we go crazy bolting everything back in, I just want to test this for functionality. I've had the sort of drive shaft out of that motor that drives the fans, and I've also had to manually move it into the up position. So I just want to check everything is moving and working as it should. Moment of truth. Okay, so we're up. And it takes a second on the way down. No, there's something not right there. Okay, let's have a look. So one of those assistor springs was just ever so slightly caught. So let's give that one more try. Beautiful, and back down again. It does take a second. Nice, okay. I'm going to get that bolted in. You can still see the top of them, but I think that's because that's exactly where that sits, which will cover it. So let me get it bolted back in, make sure everything's aligned. I'm going to wash my fingers because I don't know if you can see that. I'm getting the silicone all over the leather. And we'll get it bolted in and make sure everything's working correctly. And there we have it, one set of fixed vents. That guide was so useful. Alex, whoever you are, wherever you are a legend. And if I ever meet you in public, I'm definitely buying you a beer or two. Very good guide, very easy to do. All you need is a Torx bit. The magnetic tool I was using to retrieve the bolts from the holes down the back under that speaker grill was imperative. I don't think I could have done this job without that. So if you've got one of those, make sure to use it. If you haven't, proceed at your own peril without one. But yeah, I'm happy with that. Let's see that working. Beautiful. And back off again. Lovely. That saved a few £100 in replacement parts. I dread to think what Jaguar would have charged to replace that out of warranty or outside of warranty. So yeah, I'm pleased with that. Even if it only lasts another year or two, That's a year or two more than I would have got had it have been left alone. So that's it for today's video, guys. Hopefully that, if you've been unfortunate enough to have the same problem as myself and hundreds of other Jaguar F Type owners, hopefully that has gone some way into showing you how easy it is and how to save yourself quite a significant amount of money. As always, if you're not already liked and subscribed, please hit that button and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.